The Zinder's arrival was met with cautious optimism. Their sleek, silver ships hovered silently above Earth's cities, a testament to their advanced technology and mysterious purpose. The Zinder were a species of logic and precision, driven by an unyielding pursuit of knowledge. When they extended an offer of cultural exchange, Earth's leaders saw an opportunity for mutual growth. Dr. Emily Hayes, a renowned xenobiologist with a deep understanding of both human and alien biology, was chosen to lead the exchange. She was excited yet apprehensive, aware that the Zinder were known for their emotionless nature, a stark contrast to the vibrant emotional landscape of humanity. Emily's first encounter with Commander ZYX, the Zinder ambassador, was a study in contrasts. ZYX was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like liquid metal under the light. His eyes, devoid of any discernible emotion, were sharp and analytical. Emily, with her warm smile and expressive demeanor, felt a subtle tension in the air as they greeted each other. ZYX's voice was calm, almost mechanical, as he explained the Zinder's interest in understanding human culture, particularly the biological and social aspects that defined humanity. Emily introduced herself and outlined the objectives of the exchange. They would begin by sharing knowledge about their respective species' biology, gradually moving towards more complex social structures and customs. ZYX seemed intrigued but remained distant, his focus entirely on the logical progression of information. As they delved into the initial topics, Emily noticed how quickly the Zinder absorbed scientific knowledge, often asking pointed questions that revealed their deep curiosity. The exchange progressed smoothly, with Emily and her team sharing insights into human anatomy, disease prevention, and genetic engineering. The Zinder, in return, provided valuable information on their own biological systems, which were far more advanced in some aspects but surprisingly vulnerable in others. It was during one of these sessions that the conversation shifted toward human social behavior, specifically the concept of relationships. Emily explained how humans formed bonds that went beyond mere survival, describing the emotional connections that underpinned friendships, families, and romantic partnerships. ZYX listened intently, his analytical mind processing the information with an almost disconcerting focus. When Emily mentioned that humans mate, not just for reproduction but for pleasure and emotional fulfillment, she noticed a flicker of something in ZYX's otherwise impassive gaze. ZYX's curiosity was piqued, and he began to ask more detailed questions. Why would a species invest time and energy into activities that did not directly contribute to survival? What was the purpose of pleasure in the context of mating? Emily explained that for humans, pleasure was intertwined with emotional connection, forming a bond that strengthened relationships and ensured the well-being of both individuals and their offspring. The concept was entirely foreign to the Zinder. In their society, reproduction was a clinical process, devoid of emotion or pleasure. Mating was purely functional, performed with precision and efficiency to ensure the continuation of their species. The idea that humans could derive joy and fulfillment from such an act was both fascinating and perplexing to them. As the days passed, ZYX's questions became more frequent and more personal. He wanted to understand the psychological effects of these emotional connections, how they influenced human behavior and decision-making. Emily found herself delving into topics she had never expected to discuss with an alien species, explaining the nuances of love, desire, and the deep emotional bonds that humans cherished. The more ZYX learned, the more his logical mind struggled to reconcile these concepts with the rigid structure of Zinder society. He was shocked by the depth of emotion that humans experienced, particularly in the context of relationships. The idea that pleasure could be a motivator, that it could bring people closer together, was something that the Zinder had never considered. ZYX's growing curiosity was mirrored by the other Zinder involved in the exchange. They began to observe human interactions with a new perspective, analyzing the subtleties of body language, tone of voice, and the unspoken connections that existed between individuals. What had initially been a straightforward exchange of knowledge was now evolving into something much more profound, a challenge to the very foundation of Zinder society. Emily, sensing the shift, wondered what impact these revelations would have on the Zinder. Would they be able to integrate these new concepts into their lives, Or would they reject them as illogical and unnecessary? The answer, she knew, would shape the future of their relationship with humanity. The Zinders' interest in human relationships deepened as their initial curiosity turned into a full-scale investigation. Dr. Hayes and her team were called upon to facilitate this exploration, finding themselves in the unusual position of teaching an alien species about the intricacies of human emotions. The Zinder, known for their meticulous and thorough approach to learning, began conducting interviews with humans from various walks of life, aiming to understand the psychological and emotional aspects of relationships. Emily observed as Zinder researchers, with their emotionless precision, questioned people about their experiences with love, companionship, and intimacy. The humans shared their stories, describing the joy of falling in love, the comfort of companionship, and the complexity of maintaining a relationship. They spoke about the deep emotional connections that formed the foundation of their bonds, the pleasure they found in physical intimacy, and the way these experiences enriched their lives. For the Zinder, these conversations were a window into a world they had never imagined. Their logical minds struggled to grasp the idea that emotions could drive behavior, that pleasure could be an end in itself, and that relationships could exist for reasons beyond mere survival. Emily explained that for humans, these emotional bonds were crucial to their well-being, fostering trust, loyalty, and a sense of belonging. Love, she said, was not just a feeling but a force that influenced decisions, shaped lives, and even drove people to make sacrifices. The Zinder were particularly perplexed by the concept of pleasure in the context of mating. Commander ZYX, who had become increasingly invested in understanding these human experiences, asked why humans would engage in such activities if not for the sole purpose of reproduction. Emily explained that for humans, pleasure was intertwined with emotional connection, creating a bond that went beyond physical needs. This connection, she said, was vital for the health of the relationship and the individuals involved. As ZYX listened, he found himself grappling with ideas that defied everything he knew. In Zinder society, mating was a mechanical process, devoid of emotion or pleasure, conducted solely to ensure the continuation of their species. The idea that humans would mate for pleasure, that they would seek emotional fulfillment through such acts, was entirely foreign to him. Yet, as he continued to study human interactions, ZYX began to see patterns, subtle cues in body language, the warmth in a smile, the comfort of a gentle touch, that hinted at a depth of connection that the Zinder had never experienced. ZYX's growing fascination was shared by others within the Zinder delegation. They observed how humans formed bonds that were not based on logic or necessity but on emotion and mutual affection. The Zinder researchers, who were trained to analyze data with cold precision, found themselves challenged by the unpredictability of human emotions. They noted how relationships could be both a source of immense joy and profound pain, and how these emotions influenced human behavior in ways that were difficult to quantify. The more the Zinder learned, the more they struggled to reconcile these new concepts with their own beliefs. ZYX, in particular, found himself questioning the rigid structures of his society. Could there be value in emotions? Could pleasure and emotional connection serve a purpose beyond the purely functional? These questions unsettled him, as they hinted at a potential flaw in the Zinder's way of life. A moment of tension arose when a Zinder researcher, during an interview, inadvertently offended a human participant by dismissing their emotional experiences as irrational. The human, frustrated by the Zinder's lack of empathy, lashed out, highlighting the vast chasm between the two species' understanding of relationships. The Zinder were taken aback by the intensity of the reaction, realizing that their logical approach might not be sufficient to fully grasp the complexities of human emotions. This incident served as a turning point, prompting ZYX to approach Dr. Hayes with a renewed sense of urgency. He admitted that the Zinder were struggling to understand what drove humans to value emotions so highly. Emily, recognizing the sincerity in his words, offered to help them explore these concepts further, suggesting that perhaps the Zinder had something to learn from humanity after all. The growing fascination with human emotions among the Zinder did not go unnoticed by their leaders. What had begun as a simple cultural exchange was now spiraling into something much more complex and potentially dangerous. The Zinder High Council, alarmed by the idea that mating for pleasure could undermine their society's strict norms, convened to discuss the implications. Their society thrived on logic, order, and efficiency. Anything that introduced unpredictability or irrationality was seen as a threat. The council members debated whether the continued exposure to human concepts could lead to a breakdown of their social structure, which had been meticulously maintained for millennia. The more they learned about human emotions, the more the Zinder leaders grew uneasy. They began to question the wisdom of allowing their people to explore these ideas, fearing that it could lead to a weakening of their society's foundational principles. Some argued that the cultural exchange should be halted before it caused irreparable harm. The notion that pleasure could be pursued for its own sake, detached from function or purpose, was particularly disturbing to them. The Zinder's entire existence was built on the premise that every action had a purpose, and the introduction of pleasure as an end in itself was seen as dangerously subversive. Dr. Emily Hayes found herself caught in the middle of this growing conflict. She had dedicated her career to fostering understanding between species, but now she was faced with a dilemma that challenged her deeply held beliefs. On one hand, she believed that the Zinder could benefit from understanding human emotions, that it could enrich their lives in ways they had never imagined. On the other hand, she was acutely aware of the risks involved. The Zinder were not human. Their society was built on different principles, and forcing them to adopt human concepts could do more harm than good. Emily wrestled with her conscience, wondering whether she was pushing too hard. Was it her place to challenge the Zinder's way of life, or should she respect their boundaries and allow them to withdraw from the exchange if they chose to do so? She knew that if she continued to advocate for the exploration of human emotions, she risked alienating the Zinder leaders and potentially ending the entire cultural exchange program. Yet she also felt a deep responsibility to share the richness of human experience with them, believing that it could lead to a greater understanding between their species. The debate within the Zinder High Council grew more intense as the days passed. There were those who believed that understanding human emotions could offer valuable insights into their own evolution. They argued that by exploring new concepts, the Zinder could discover new ways to enhance their society, perhaps even finding a balance between logic and emotion. This faction saw the cultural exchange as an opportunity for growth, a chance to evolve beyond their current limitations. However, others were vehemently opposed to this idea. They viewed the introduction of emotions as a dangerous path that could lead to chaos and disorder. For them, the risk of destabilizing their society far outweighed any potential benefits. They argued that the Zinder had thrived for millennia by adhering to strict logical principles, and there was no need to introduce elements that could undermine that stability. The debate reached a fever pitch, with both sides presenting compelling arguments, but no clear consensus in sight. Amid this turmoil, a Zinder scientist conducting experiments on human emotions made a startling discovery. In an attempt to simulate a human emotional response, the scientist accidentally experienced a sensation akin to joy. The experience was brief but profound, shaking the scientist to their core. For the first time, a Zinder had felt something beyond logic, something that defied their understanding of the world. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Zinder community, challenging everything they thought they knew about themselves. The incident forced the Zinder leaders to reconsider their position. The scientist's experience could not be ignored, and it raised questions about the potential for emotions to play a role in their society. The High Council faced a pivotal decision: should they continue the cultural exchange with humans, embracing the possibility of change, or should they retreat to the safety of their established ways? The answer would determine the future of their species and their relationship with humanity. The Zinder government, increasingly alarmed by the growing interest in human emotions among their people, took a decisive step. An official communication was sent, declaring that the cultural exchange with Earth must be terminated immediately, or severe consequences would follow. The leaders feared that the influence of human emotions could unravel the fabric of their society, leading to chaos and disorder. They were not willing to risk the stability of their civilization for the sake of curiosity. The ultimatum was clear: either the exchange ended, or the Zinder would cut all ties with humanity, possibly even take hostile actions to ensure their society remained untainted. Dr. Emily Hayes received the news with a heavy heart. She knew that this was a critical moment, not just for the cultural exchange, but for the future relationship between the two species. Despite the risks, she believed deeply in the value of what the Zinder had been learning. Emotions were not a weakness, but a strength that had shaped human history in profound ways. Emily decided she could not remain silent. She gathered the courage to confront the Zinder leaders, making a passionate argument that emotions could offer the Zinder a new dimension of understanding and growth. She pointed out how emotions had driven innovation, art, and cooperation among humans, arguing that the Zinder could similarly benefit from integrating these aspects into their lives. Emily's words were met with resistance, but she refused to back down. She highlighted the potential for emotions to enhance the Zinder's interactions with other species, to bring about a more holistic understanding of the universe. She knew she was walking a fine line, but she believed that the stakes were too high to simply walk away. The Zinder were on the brink of a new era, and she was determined to show them that emotions could be a valuable part of that future. Commander ZYX, who had been quietly observing the growing tension, found himself at a crossroads. His time spent with Dr. Hayes had opened his eyes to the benefits of emotional connections. He had seen how humans, despite their imperfections, found strength in their relationships, how emotions could drive them to achieve great things. ZYX knew that the Zinder's rigid adherence to logic had its strengths, but he also saw the limitations it imposed. The more he learned from the humans, the more he realized that there was something missing in the Zinder way of life. Faced with the ultimatum from his government, ZYX made a bold decision. He would not follow the directive to end the exchange. Instead, he chose to continue learning about human emotions, even if it meant defying his superiors. ZYX believed that the potential benefits outweighed the risks, and that the Zinder could evolve in ways they had never imagined by embracing what they had learned from humans. It was a decision that would put him at odds with the very leadership he had served faithfully for so long. In a tense and charged moment, Commander ZYX stood before the Zinder High Council and openly defied their orders. He declared that he would not abandon the cultural exchange, arguing that the Zinder could no longer afford to ignore the potential of emotions. His defiance shocked the council, leading to an immediate and heated division among its members. Some were outraged by ZYX's rebellion, viewing it as a betrayal of their values, while others began to see merit in his argument. The split within the council reflected a broader uncertainty within Zinder society itself, as they stood on the brink of a decision that could change the course of their civilization forever. After intense deliberation, the Zinder leadership reached a decision. The initial fear of emotional influence giving way to chaos had not disappeared, but the argument for potential growth had gained traction. The High Council, divided but not broken, agreed to allow the cultural exchange to continue, albeit in a more controlled manner. This decision was seen as a compromise, a cautious step forward that would let the Zinder explore human emotions without fully disrupting their societal norms. They would implement stringent guidelines, ensuring that any experimentation with emotions would be carefully monitored. The split within the council was acknowledged, but for now, a path forward had been chosen, a path that could lead to profound changes in the future. Dr. Emily Hayes felt a deep sense of accomplishment as she reflected on the journey. The cultural exchange had been more challenging than she could have ever anticipated, but the outcome had justified the effort. Emotions, she realized, were not just a human experience, they were a universal force that could transcend species and cultures. The exchange had not only opened the Zinder's eyes to new possibilities, but had also deepened her understanding of what it meant to be human. Emily saw how the experience had strengthened the bonds between the two species, creating a foundation for future cooperation. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but the progress they had made gave her hope that a new era of understanding was within reach. The Zinder began their cautious experimentation with emotions in controlled environments. Small groups were selected to experience simulated emotions, starting with basic feelings like curiosity and contentment. The results were subtle but significant. These experiments began to influence how the Zinder interacted with each other and with humans. There were no immediate, dramatic shifts in their society, but the seeds of change had been planted. Commander ZYX became a key figure in this new direction, symbolizing the blend of logic and emotion. His decision to defy the High Council had not only sparked debate but had also inspired others to consider the value of what they were learning. ZYX's role in guiding this new exploration of emotions marked him as a leader of a potential new era for the Zinder, one where they might evolve beyond their purely logical roots. The story ends with a reflection on the power of cultural exchange and the potential it holds for transformation. Even the most logical beings, like the Zinder, can learn from the emotional depth that defines humanity. This exchange had shown that understanding, when pursued with an open mind, could lead to unforeseen and valuable growth. The journey had just begun, and the future promised more discoveries that could reshape both species in ways they had yet to imagine.